Alrighty. Hello. My name is Mark Hutchison. Email hutchmm6. You guys will have seen me in lecture chats as well as the Discords, commonly going under the alias Moonstar. Today, we're going to be addressing one of the minor problems of how to get the JupyterHub working, as well as the difference between the JupyterHub and the local Jupyter install. I'm going to cover how to also install a local version of Jupyter. And then finally, I'm going to take you through some of the stuff that Jupyter and the JupyterHub can do for you, such as loading assignments as a student and other things. I'm going to look both at the JupyterHub and I'm going to look at the local Jupyter install. And I'm just going to clarify that, the operations are going to be the same. It's just how you load them. So the first half of this video is going to be dedicated purely to the JupyterHub. The second half of this video is going to be dedicated purely to the local Jupyter install. Starting with the JupyterHub, there's going to be a couple things you have to do to get your student CAS accounts created. Without a CAS account, you cannot access the login portal. I have a variety of different accounts for me to test with, and I'm going to just be testing with my typical HutchM6 student account. Now, there are going to be things that I can't show you, of course, such as my student password and stuff like that. However, the operations should all be the same. Step one, as a student, is you're going to have to open a terminal. I have a program called Termius, which I use because I love it. However, there are a variety of terminals you could use, such as the built-in Windows terminal. You could use, if you're on Windows, you have access to Windows PowerShell. You also have access to the Windows command prompt. And if you have the WSL, which I highly recommend, you could gain access to an Ubuntu terminal. All of these would work. Additionally, some of you might have Git Bash. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Git Bash. I don't use Git Bash personally, but that's also an option. You basically pick whatever terminal you're most familiar with, and you will open an SSH command. The reason I like Tabby is, it used to be called Terminus, it's now called Tabby, is because it saves SSH profiles for you to access, but I'm going to show you how to do it manually. What we're going to do is we're going to type SSH, which tells your computer to launch the command. Next, we're going to tell it who to log in as, which is our MAC ID. So in my case, I'm HutchM6. That's my username for the server. I'm then going to put an @ symbol because I need to tell it where we're logging in to. And that's going to be jhub1md3.cas.mcmaster.ca. You're going to go ahead, begin the SSH, and it's going to prompt you for your student password. Now, I have mine copy and pasted, ready to go, and I still somehow failed. So I'm going to actually right-click paste. There we go. So I failed to log in. It tells you that I failed to log in. However, you now see I'm getting HutchM6 at jhub1md3, and then this little squiggly. This little squiggly represents I'm in my home, and this home on the right side perfectly lines up with this directory web page on the left side. Once you have one of these accounts, you will then be able to log in to JupyterHub. So the moment that you've SSH'd, you can now type exit because you don't need the terminal anymore. You can just yeet that out of existence. You can go to jhub1md3 at cas.mcmaster.ca. You can log in. My Discord's blowing up right now because the first year channel is quite hectic. When you get in, you should see this. Now, I am a course admin, so I might be able to see more than you guys. I might not. I haven't tested it from an actual student account. However, I have access to the form grader, which immediately makes me think that I do have more than you guys. What will be relevant to you is assignments. From here, you can click on the released assignment you want, in my case, A1. I will fetch A1. Then back in Files, I can refresh, and you see I have an A1 folder. Inside is a1.ipynb, and in here is the actual assignment we're going to do. It's going to load, and there's the notebook. I'm going to go through, and there are a series of practice questions, like question 1, and as you can see, There's absolutely nothing here because this is a test. This is for you to just go through, find some information on Python, and go ahead and add it. So I can do the practice question, and I'm going to follow exactly what it's kind of recommending here. I'm going to define a function called add numbers. It takes in 3 variables, x, y, and z, and it's just going to add them all together. So, declaration, tell Python that you're starting a function by calling the def keyword, so def. Step 2, name. You have to name the function, so I'm going to call it add numbers, which is what the question asks. Parameters, there are variables used inside the function, so x, y, and z. Next, Python likes these little colons. This is how you tell a function that everything afterwards is going to be a function. And notice how it indented. Python saw the colon and said, you need to now indent to define the function. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a variable called s, and I'm going to set it to x plus y plus z. Finally, I'm going to return the value of s from this function back to the code that prints it. I can then run this cell, and I can run the tests. Now, you know a test worked when it prints nothing. You know a test did not work when it prints something. Now, I've specifically set up this test case here to be wrong. The reason I set it up to be wrong was so you can see what it looks like when a test case works and when it doesn't work. This first one is a working test case. This second one is a not working test case. The answer for this should be 12. You cannot edit it. I've locked the cell purely so you can see they don't work. I'm going to unlock it so you guys can edit it because this is actually a problem. Like, you will not be able to validate your notebook until that. Oh, or you can. I guess that works. Never mind. Ignore what I just said. Then you have all of your questions. These are going to be the practice questions you go through and earn grades on. This is the entire assignment. There's a bonus question for you to gain marks even when you don't do so hot. And you're going to notice that there are public test cases provided, as well as here, there's private test cases. You cannot see what goes in them, but there is code there. And those are what determine your grade. It will not tell you if you're right or wrong. Like, I could run any private test case and nothing happens because private test cases are for us, not you. Additionally, you see these, your code here, raise not implemented errors. These are automatically generated by JupyterHub. We're going to be turning them off. Sarth is the one who knows how to turn that off, so I'm going to ask him to look at that. But you can just delete those. We do not care. Those are just automatically put there by JupyterHub, and they really shouldn't. Once you have completed an assignment and you are comfortable, ready to submit it, you go back to the Assignments tab. You go down to Downloaded Assignments. You scroll over to the blue Submit button, and you click Submit. Now you have submitted the assignment, and it shows you the date and time that the assignment was submitted for. If you realized you screwed up, you can go back, you can make whatever edits. You can just be like, oh, this shouldn't be x plus y plus z, this should be x plus z plus y, blah, blah, blah. You can save that, you can head over to assignments, resubmit. You have unlimited submissions. Go ham. We do not punish you. There is no penalty. Submit frequently. Whenever you complete a question, no matter how mundane that question is, submit the notebook. Because worst case scenario, your JHub may break. And if you have to go from JHub to local Jupyter, you lose all of your progress. But if you submit, you could email a TA saying, I can't access JHub, but I have a submission. Could you download the file and send it to me? And we as TAs can go into the server, we can access your submissions, and we can actually send it to you. You could then continue offline with the exact same amount of work done. So please submit often. There is no punishment for it. In fact, it is only better for you if you submit frequently. Like every chance you get. You complete a question, just save the document, open up another tab, and click submit. It takes a second, and it's very, very valuable. Okay, so that is how JupyterHub works. It is now the 10-minute and 12-second mark, and we're going to be switching over to the local Jupyter. The local Jupyter is a different kind of overall feel. It's a bit more work, but still very important. You will need it for assignment 2. We do not allow any submissions of assignment 2 via JupyterHub because people need to know how to use it. So I have a specific code folder where I keep all of my Python stuff. I have specifically 1MD3, and I'm just going to create a folder for us to go through some of this stuff together. So I'm just going to do JHub tutorial folder. Now, recall, what we're doing here is the local Jupyter. We're not using JHub. And it's very, very important we distinguish between these two because many people mix up the terms and it can be kind of confusing to the TAs. Additionally, you're going to need a terminal, once again. A little scary, I know. If you don't know how to use a terminal, I really recommend you guys get started. You're going to need it for classes moving forward in the computer science field. For me, I'm going to first navigate to here. So you type CD to change directory, and you type where you want to go, and now I'm actually in this folder on my terminal. From here, we have a couple options. First, we have to decide how we're going to download Jupyter. Now, Jupyter can be downloaded through, as Nick recommends, the Anaconda distribution. Anaconda is really helpful, so I'm gonna go to the page, Anaconda. And I just realized DuckDuckGoing Anaconda may not actually be helpful, so I'm going to Anaconda... Oh, no, it actually came up. I did not expect it to come up. So this is Anaconda. It is a package library for Python. And what it will do is it comes default with a couple packages, which are actually really helpful, and makes it easier for you to get Python work started. What we really care about, though, is Anaconda Python download. And whenever I type that, individual edition. I always forget what it's called, but it's the individual edition. It shows you right here everything that comes with it, and I have an extension making this dark. But so you can see Jupyter is one of the many things that comes with it. However, Jupyter is not the only thing that comes with it, and this is why I actually recommend against using Anaconda, is because it installs SciPy Spider, NumPy, Dask, Bokeh, TensorFlow, HoloViews, PyTorch, Conda as an actual terminal, Matplotlib, Pandas, all of that, and you're only going to use, in this course, Jupyter, NumPy, which runs Jupyter, and Matplotlib, which we don't test you on, we just teach you. So the fact that it installs well over like 14 libraries and you only need 3 of them, it's pretty expensive. However, the advantage of Conda is there's no setup on your end. You download Conda and you're done. The other way to do it is to use the official built-in Python PIP, pip. Pip is another package library. Nothing comes installed with it except Python. You can then ask pip to install only ever what you need. So when you download Python, and you download the latest version for whatever your operating system is, you will immediately in the installer be asked to install pip with it. So I'm just gonna, for the sake of showing you, I never ever remember how to install Python. There we go. So I'm just going to download the installer and open it so you can see where it installs pip. Open the file. It will open a little executable. I don't know which monitor. There we go. You want to add it to path, and when you customize installation, right there, those little checkboxes, you want to click install pip. Like I said, Either one is available to you. I'm going to download Conda just so I can show you how to use Conda as well, because I don't use Conda personally. I don't like the bloatware. I don't have a lot of space on my computer as is. Like you can see, I've got very little space, but it's something you got to be ready to do. So, how do we do the pip? I'm going to start with pip because that's what I'm comfortable with. And then I'm going to move over to Anaconda because that's what a lot of you will probably pick. Both of these work, you just pick whichever one you like. So, with pip, you go over to your command line, and you have the choice of using virtual environments or not. I like virtual environments because, one, basically, you can delete a virtual environment, and you delete every extension with it. So after 1MD3, you may never use Jupyter again. In that case, you want to uninstall Jupyter to get more space on your laptop. With virtual environments, you just delete the virtual environment and bada bing, bada boom, you're done. So if you want to go that way, you would type pip install virtual env. It will go through. As you can see, I already have satisfied it. Then you will gain access to the virtual env command. And I'm going to create a virtual environment called venv. Whoops, I put a period. You just want a virtual environment and then the name of what you're going to call it. Notice now it's created a venv folder. This is my virtual environment. Inside are libraries that I have installed, scripts to execute, stuff like that. Then what I'm going to do in my terminal, I'm going to clear it so that way it's nice and easy to see. I'm going to type /. I'm going to go into my VM folder. I'm going to go into the scripts, and I'm going to type activate. Notice how now I have this little red flag in my terminal that shows the Python symbol and the virtual environment. This is indicating that I am within a Python virtual environment. Everything I do here is only existent in this folder, not on my entire system. From there, I can do pip install Jupyter space Jupyter Notebook. I believe it's called Jupyter Notebook. It's been a while since I've done this, so no, Jupyter Notebook is not what it's called. So when in doubt, go to Google, Jupyter pip install, Project Jupyter, installing the Jupyter software. Oh, it's called Jupyter Lab now. Cool. So you can just do pip install Jupyter Lab, and it will begin downloading. It downloads everything you need. You do not have to ever worry about missing something because it will just go through and do it all on your behalf. Additionally, for this course, you're going to need a library called matplotlib. Again, this comes installed with Conda. This doesn't come installed, though, with pip. You're going to have to go out and install it. And as many of you have probably guessed, the way to install it is just pip install matplotlib. So the moment that this is done installing, I will install that too. I know, I make this look much more fun than it actually is, sitting around waiting for text to hurry up and appear. Lovely! So now I'm going to go pip install matplotlib. And that's just going to quickly go through. Matplotlib requires the NumPy library, again, also installed with Conda, so that's what it's doing there. Now that I have Jupyter installed, it's as easy as typing Jupyter space notebook space and then a period. This period tells you where you're opening the Jupyter notebook. So I want to open it specifically in this folder, so that's why I did period, but I could open it in VM by typing VM, stuff like that. And then it says to access the notebook, you want to go to one of these links. So I'm going to copy this link. I'm going to open up here, and I'm going to go to that link, and bada bing, bada boom. Notice it looks exactly the same as JupyterHub, what's going on is we're hosting a local JupyterHub, essentially. So now that we have all of the local files, if I were to go through and just for the sake of testing, I'm going to go test.ipymb. It now appears in here. I can click on it, and it's a Jupyter notebook. There's no metadata in it, though. You're going to ask, well, how do we actually open a proper notebook? Well, at the end of this week, I will be uploading the final version of Assignment 1 to the Avenue to Learn. So when you log into the Avenue to Learn, and you go to our course login page as soon as, it decides to load, you'll be able to go to the Assignments tab and download Assignment 1. That file that you download for Assignment 1 is what you'd end up going and editing. So in Comp Sci 1MD3, I go to Assessments, Assignments, and these aren't visible for you. Notice the eyeball that's crossed out, but they are visible for me because I'm a TA life, swag. I'm going to go through. You would be brought to a different page, but the page you'd be brought to would just have a download link to a file called A1, and it's of the IPYMB file extension. You also have a README in case you need help with any of the instructions I've detailed. They're in this README file. You just download a1.ipymb. I'm going to save the file. I'm going to go to the file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the file into my Jupyter folder. And now if I go back to this web browser, whoops, apologies, I have a1.ipymb. When I click it, bada bing, bada boom. You will notice this is an old version of the assignment, not what we're using now. I still have to edit it. But yeah, it's the exact same process. Once you are done with Assignment 1, because there's no Assignments tab, what you would do is you would just take this a1.ipymb file and you would re-upload that back to Avenue. You'd just submit it. Like the good old classic kind of way of submitting files. Okay, so that was how to use pip. Let's talk how to use Anaconda. Now, it's been a while since I've used Anaconda because I don't like Anaconda. So I actually have to legitimately install Anaconda from the very beginning. But it's very much the same general workflow. So I'm going to move this over. You just download, click agree, just me, choose an install location, register. I'm not registering Anaconda as my default Python 3.8, but I am adding it to path. It says not recommended. I ignore that because I want to be able to type conda in my terminals and be able to use the commands. I don't know why they don't recommend it. It's actually more of a pain in the ass to do without selecting that box. So it's just going to go and install what it needs to install. And then we should be back in a second. Okie doke. That took way longer than expected, but now that it's downloaded, you can see I have a bunch of Anaconda links, including Jupyter Notebook. Now I can just click Jupyter Notebook, and what's going to happen is it will open a command prompt, and it should spawn a local version of Jupyter Notebook. It'll redirect you, and then it's a local version of Jupyter Notebook, but it's hosted within your Documents folder. Now, again, my Documents folder is not where I'm actually keeping all of my files, so I'm going to close that, and instead I'm just going to go to the Anaconda prompt. This is a special command line that exists for Anaconda users. Notice it also has base. This is a Conda virtual environment. Virtual environments, of course, being hosted by the thing I showed you how to install earlier. So when downloading Anaconda, it also downloads the virtual environment thing for you. However, you do have access to d/code/python/1md3/jhub tutorial And whoops, I have to be in the D drive to CD to that. Now I'm there. And of course, I can exactly the same as before type Jupyter notebook period, and it works exactly the same. Bada bing, bada boom. So, Conda is a download and everything's set up. Pip requires some setup yourself, but installs a lot less. You're going to have to weigh the pros and the cons and what means more to you. Now, it has been pointed out that VS Code also has an Anaconda extension. Or not an Anaconda extension. It has a Jupyter extension. When you type Jupyter, you get Microsoft. And Microsoft has created a Jupyter Notebook extension in which also creates a virtual environment and then launches Jupyter in that virtual environment, which means that this is a third method, not just pip or Anaconda. You now have VS Code. And when you have the Jupyter extension, you should just be able to click on a Jupyter notebook thing. Once my VS Code actually chooses to load, I have a lot of extensions, which a lot of extensions can really slow down your Visual Studio Code. I have 87 being actively used, with 56 being disabled and only enabled in specific workplaces. But as you can see, the assignment has loaded within JupyterHub. Within JupyterHub within VS Code. And it's the exact same as if you're using normal JupyterHub, but with certain VS Code goodies. For example, you get VS Code IntelliSense. So when I type 4, I get my VS Code for loop, which builds a for loop for me. You can also get VS Code automated snippets, which come courtesy of GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot is going to be an interesting thing that I'm going to avoid talking about purely because using it in this course is actually a disadvantage, because GitHub Copilot pulls everything from the internet. And it happens to pull it from the exact places that we're already scanning for in our piracy detection with Moss. Or, not piracy. Piracy is illegal downloading. Begins with a P. Plagiarism. Plagiarism. That's it. Stupid moment. No, but Moss will scan for those specific code snippets across GitHub, because that's one of the places that it will actually look. That and Stack Overflow and other places. So using GitHub Copilot actually puts you at a significant disadvantage, because there is a very, very real chance that you'll just get flagged. Now, you could be using small amounts of code, like when I type return x plus y. That's entirely reasonable, and that was GitHub Copilot. However, I'm not entirely sure how Moss will see that. Just be aware, use at your own risk if you have these technologies. But yeah, once you have downloaded the Jupyter extension by going to VS Code and typing Jupyter, you can download Jupyter. Jupyter Keymap also is helpful. You do not want the depreciated stuff, and you don't need the previewer because it all comes with Jupyter. Jupyter is a suite. It's not just a single extension. It is a combination of extensions. As you can see, it's an extension pack. So it's very, very helpful. And it allows you, without having to install any of that garbage, still open up these Jupyter notebooks. I can personally attest these are 100% valid. I have worked with them. I've submitted them. There is no downside to using Jupyter notebooks. So feel free to use this if you choose. VS Code is 100%. You've got a Jupyter server right here. VS Code starts a local host for you. You can also put in the URL of an existing Jupyter server. Hey guys, just me from the future coming back whilst I was editing this video. I noticed I made it sound really cool when I said that you can link up the local Jupyter URL to your VS Code. Just need to clarify some stuff because I looked into it a bit more. I didn't actually realize quite what it was doing. We are not running our JupyterHub on a Git supported server, meaning that the files that you guys create do not just automatically via the cloud synchronize to your VS Code. What we're doing when we use the use URL of remote server in VS Code is it uses the Python interpreter and all of the libraries that are being hosted on the foreign server, and it is using those to run your notebook. Basically, it takes your notebook, uploads it to the server, runs all the tests, takes the notebook back, and then deletes itself. This is still really helpful because basically, if you guys install something like Pandas on your local computer and you use that library, you would fail test cases in the actual assignments. However, if you were using the Jupyter server remote instead of local, you wouldn't actually have access to Pandas even though you installed it, because you only have access to what exists on the actual JHub server, the proper McMaster hosted JHub server. The disadvantage of using this is you need to, of course, have the VPN enabled in order to actually access that server, and it can be a bit tiresome. So know the pros and the cons. If you want to know more, you can message me privately about it, but I actually think that you guys should probably forget that I sounded so excited when I mentioned that this feature existed, because the feature is not exactly what I thought the feature was, because that's not how we set it up to work. If you want to edit files remotely on the actual JHub server, what you guys would need to use is something called remote SSH. It is another VS Code extension. You would take the SSH command I put at the beginning of the video, and you would use that command, you'd build an SSH profile, and VS Code would actually SSH into the server for you. That is how you do what I sounded like I was suggesting. But yeah, not what I actually thought it was, so this is just a little interjection. Yeah. Anyways, back to your regularly scheduled program. Okay. So, that was how to install Jupyter locally, both via pip, via Anaconda, and via Microsoft's VS Code. I hope I covered everything. This video has been almost over 30 minutes long, so if you guys have any questions whatsoever, you know where to email me. Spam me. I don't care. You could private message me on Teams. You could private message me on Discord. You can email me. You can get me on Piazza. I don't check that very often, but I mean, it's still a valid way of getting to me. So go ahead and contact me if you need it. And yeah, I don't know how to properly end a video, so I'm just going to cut this off.